February 21st, 1930, Florence, Arizona. Dawn was still hiding behind the desert horizon. But inside the Arizona State Prison, more than 50 witnesses stood shoulder to shoulder, waiting in a silence heavy enough to crush the air. They weren't there for an ordinary execution. This morning would carve its place into Arizona's history. For the first time ever, the state was preparing to execute a woman. And for the first time, women were allowed to stand among the witnesses. Her name was Eva Dugan, 52 years old, small in frame, but carrying a presence that unsettled even hardened officers. As guards escorted her toward the gallows, Eva didn't flinch. She didn't tremble. She didn't show the slightest crack of fear. Instead, she walked with a strange calmness, the kind you'd expect from someone heading into a Sunday church service, not her own death. The crowd watched her ascend the wooden steps one by one. Some whispered that no ordinary woman could face death this way. Others murmured about the crime that sealed her fate. An elderly rancher found dead, a stolen car, and a teenage boy who vanished into thin air the moment the investigation began. Exactly 5:11 a.m. The executioner gripped the lever. The black hood slipped over Eva's face. The rope tightened around her neck. In just a few breaths, her life would end. Or so everyone thought. But what happened next would horrify the room, shake the state's political system, and force Arizona to abandon the gallows forever. Eva Dugan's execution wouldn't just end a life. It would rewrite history. What crime led her here, and what went so catastrophically wrong that the state swore never to repeat it? Before we dive deeper, hit that like button and subscribe. This is part of our series exploring the most shocking executions in American history. Now, let's talk about Eva Dugan. Eva Dugan was born in 1878 in Salisbury, Missouri. Her early life seemed ordinary at first glance. She grew up in a small town, attended local schools, and eventually married. From that marriage came 2 children, a son and a daughter. For a while, life appeared to be moving in a steady, predictable direction. But then tragedy struck. Her husband abandoned the family. One day he was simply gone. No explanation, no warning, nothing to indicate that he would leave. Eva was suddenly alone, left to care for 2 children with no financial support. In that era, a woman alone with children and no income had limited options. She could remarry quickly, rely on the charity of relatives, or find work that most society deemed inappropriate or shameful. Eva chose a different path that in the late 1890s. A gold rush drew thousands northward to the Klondike region of Alaska. Between 1896 and 1899, dreamers, adventurers, and desperate souls flooded the territory seeking fortune and escape. Eva joined them, moving to Juneau. It was a bold, perhaps reckless move, but she was determined not to sit idle and wait for someone to rescue her. In Juneau, Eva found work as a cabaret singer. The pay was modest, barely enough to support herself, let alone 2 children. Survival demanded more than singing. To provide for her children, Eva entered prostitution, a choice driven not by vice but by necessity. She had mouths to feed and no husband to share the burden. Every decision she made during those years was colored by survival. As years passed, Eva drifted, moving in search of stability and safety. She married 5 times in total. One husband left her for another woman, and the other 4 vanished mysteriously. Their disappearances were never explained. Eva herself never offered answers. Eventually, she moved south to Puma County, Arizona, seeking a quieter life, away from the chaos of her past. She was older now, weary from a life that demanded constant resilience. She longed for something steady, something respectable. That stability came in the form of a housekeeper position for an elderly man named Andrew J. Mathis. Mathis owned a small chicken ranch, modest but respectable. For Eva, it seemed like a new beginning. A roof over her head, food on the table, and steady pay. But Mathis was no ordinary employer. Years earlier, he had been involved in a heinous crime. In 1898, 2 Native American teenagers were lynched in Oklahoma. Mathis had played a role, setting fire to the brush surrounding the victims. Convicted of kidnapping in 1899, he served nearly 7 years in federal prison. Here was the situation. Eva Dugan, a woman with a mysterious past and missing husbands, working for Andrew J. Mathis, a man with a dark criminal history, in an isolated chicken ranch in the Arizona desert. The environment was tense, fragile, and waiting for a spark. Eva's new job quickly turned into a nightmare. Mathis was demanding, abrasive, and never satisfied. He criticized everything she did, from her cooking to her housekeeping. The relationship became increasingly toxic, and in January 1927, Mathis fired Eva, demanding she leave by morning. That was January 27, 1927, the last day anyone saw him alive. The next morning, Mathis was gone. But it wasn't just him. His Dodge coupe, cash box, and several possessions were missing. Neighbors noticed Eva attempting to sell Mathis property. Some chickens, a cow, and other items from the ranch. Soon after, Eva vanished as well, accompanied by a mysterious teenage boy she called Jack. No one knew his real identity. He had only recently appeared at the Mathis ranch, apparently seeking work. Eva and Jack drove Mathis' Dodge coupe to Amarillo, Texas, where Eva sold the car for $600. She signed the paperwork as Eva Mathis, while Jack signed as AJ Mathis. Their trail led them to Kansas City, Missouri, and then disappeared entirely. Back in Arizona, questions mounted. Where was Mathis? Why was Eva in possession of his belongings and car? The police investigation yielded no body, no witnesses, and no concrete evidence. Eva had vanished with Jack, leaving the case dormant for months. Nearly a year later, Eva's freedom ended in White Plains, New York. A postal clerk intercepted a postcard addressed to her from her father in California. Authorities were alerted, and Eva was arrested. Extradited back to Arizona, she faced charges not for murder, but for auto theft, specifically the theft of Mathis' Dodge coupe. The trial was straightforward, the evidence undeniable. She was found guilty and sentenced to 9 months in prison. During her incarceration, investigators dug deeper into her life. They discovered her father lived in California, and her daughter, Mrs. Cecil Lovelace, resided nearby. Details about her son remained unknown. Eva refused to disclose his identity. Her marriages, 5 in total, revealed a troubling pattern. 1 husband left her. The other 4 disappeared mysteriously. While there was no evidence tying her to their fates, the coincidences were difficult to ignore. Now her employer had disappeared, further fueling suspicion. 9 months passed. Eva Dugan had served her sentence for auto theft, likely believing her worst days were behind her. But October 1927 brought shocking developments. A camper named J.F. Nash, a machinist from Oklahoma, set up camp on the old Mathis ranch. While driving tent stakes, he struck something solid, a shallow grave. Digging further revealed decomposed remains. Andrew J. Mathis, buried on his own property. The discovery made headlines. Police quickly focused on Eva, already serving time for stealing Mathis' car. What had once been a case of auto theft now escalated to first-degree murder. The trial began in February 1928 at the Second Panel County Courthouse in Florence. Surprisingly short for a murder case, the prosecution relied heavily on circumstantial evidence. There were no witnesses to the murder, no weapon, just a body and a housekeeper who had fled. Eva took the stand in her defense, revealing a startling story. She admitted to Mathis believing she had poisoned his breakfast, though she claimed the man had eaten rotten rabbit meat, not poison. She disclosed a sexual relationship with Mathis and detailed prostitution conducted at the ranch for $3 per client, with Mathis taking a portion of each transaction. Eva also spoke of Jack, the teenage boy, claiming he accidentally killed Mathis during a confrontation. They attempted to revive him but failed. Together, they transported Mathis' body in the Dodge coupe, dumping it early the following morning. The courtroom buzzed with disbelief. The prosecution dismissed her story, asserting she killed Mathis for money, car, and property, portraying Jack as either imaginary or a convenient scapegoat. After deliberation, the jury convicted Eva Dugan of first-degree murder. When asked if she had anything to say, she showed no fear. "Well, I'll die with my boots on and in full health, and that's more than most of you old coots will be able to boast on, she told the court. She was sentenced to hang. Originally scheduled for June 1, 1928, Eva appealed to the Arizona Supreme Court, securing a stay. The court affirmed her conviction in December 1929, resentencing her to hang on February 21, 1930. During her time on death row, Eva astonished guards with her cheerful demeanor. She did not cry, pray, or despair. She became known as Cheerful Eva, giving interviews for money, knitting handkerchiefs, and selling them to visitors. She even made a silk beaded dress for her execution but later opted for a simpler outfit. Her calmness endured through her last night, playing cards and joking with friends until midnight. Prison officials discovered she had hidden a small bottle of raw ammonia, intended as poison, and 3 safety razor blades, an attempt to cheat the gallows. Eva accepted the discovery with composure, preparing for her final walk. On February 21, 1930, at 5 a.m., guards escorted Eva across the rainy grounds to the gallows. She smoked, joked, and sang. Inside, 60 witnesses waited, including 6 women, the first time women witnessed an execution in Arizona. She climbed the 13 steps calmly, smiled beneath the black hood, and responded to Warden Wright's blessing with a simple, "Goodbye, Daddy Wright." At 5:11 a.m., the trapdoor was sprung. What happened next shocked everyone. Eva Dugan, facing death with her usual calmness, descended through the gallows. But the rope did not act as intended. Instead of breaking her neck cleanly, the rope severed her head completely from her body. Her head rolled across the wooden floor, coming to rest at the feet of horrified witnesses. Her body dropped below into a growing pool of blood. Yet, for several minutes, her heart continued to pump, blood spattering from her severed neck. Panic erupted in the chamber. 5 witnesses fainted immediately. 2 women and 3 men. The remaining 55 stood frozen, unable to process the scene before them. The gallows room emptied within minutes as horror overcame every soul present. Dr. LaLove, the prison physician, pronounced Eva Dugan dead on the spot. What had been intended as a simple execution became a grotesque spectacle, forever marking Arizona's history. Eva Dugan had become the first woman executed by the state, the first execution witnessed by women, and the last time Arizona would use the gallows. News spread quickly. Newspapers nationwide ran gruesome headlines. The Arizona Daily Star detailed the macabre scene. Editorials questioned the humanity of hanging as a method of execution. Legislators felt the public pressure and could not ignore the incident. Within 4 years, the Arizona legislature abolished hanging entirely, replacing it with what they believed to be a more humane option: the gas chamber. For 60 years, the gas chamber became the standard method of execution. Prisoners were strapped into sealed chairs, and cyanide gas was released to end their lives. Authorities considered it cleaner, more controlled, and more humane than hanging. That belief was shattered in April 1992. Donald Eugene Harding was executed in Arizona's gas chamber, writhing violently, gasping for breath, his body convulsing against the restraints. Witnesses described a scene of pure agony, reminiscent of the horror Eva's execution had sparked 62 years earlier. Public outrage erupted once again, forcing Arizona to reconsider execution methods. By November 1992, a ballot initiative passed, allowing death row inmates already sentenced to choose between gas chamber or lethal injection. All future executions would exclusively use lethal injection. Eva Dugan's death had triggered a chain reaction, reshaping capital punishment in Arizona for nearly a century. Her execution exposed the brutal reality of state-sanctioned death. It did not end the death penalty but forced reform and reflection on its practice. Only 3 more hangings occurred in Arizona after Eva's death. Refugio Macias was hanged on March 7, 1930, just 2 weeks later. Herbert Young followed on August 21, 1931. Earl Gardner was hanged by federal authorities on July 12, 1936. Then the gallows fell silent forever. Eva remained the only woman executed by the state. She was buried in the Arizona State Prison Cemetery, wearing the white silk shroud she had made herself, paying an undertaker to prepare her coffin weeks before her death. Even in death, she exercised control over her life. The noose that decapitated her is preserved at the Panel County Historic Society and Museum in Florence, Arizona. It serves as a grim reminder of what happened that day. Yet Eva's legacy extends beyond artifacts or headlines. Her story serves as a cautionary tale, forcing society to confront the moral and practical realities of execution. If a state could not execute someone cleanly, what did that imply about the system itself? Eva Dugan was a survivor shaped by hardship. She had navigated life as a single mother, a sex worker in Alaska and Arizona, a woman abandoned by husbands, and possibly a murderer. Her story about Jack, the mysterious teenage boy, may have been true, a fabrication, or a convenient scapegoat, but it added layers of complexity to her narrative. Her life raises difficult questions about desperation, survival, and morality. In her final hours, Eva displayed remarkable courage. She played cards, prepared her own last meal, and joked with guards. She faced death without tears, pleas, or fear, walking to the gallows on her own terms. Her words to the jury echoed long after her death. "Well, I'll die with my boots on and in full health, and that's more than most of you old coots will be able to boast on." She had lived life according to her rules, defiant to the end. Eva Dugan's execution forced Arizona to confront uncomfortable truths about capital punishment. It was not merely a story about a criminal being punished. It was a story about the system, human error, and the limits of state control over life and death. She exposed the inhumanity of hanging, prompted legislative change, and left a mark on history that would influence generations. Her death demonstrated the complexities of justice. It revealed that human life, no matter how flawed, deserves careful consideration. Her case highlighted how circumstances, desperation, and survival can shape choices that society judges harshly. Eva Dugan's story remains a stark reminder that executions are not clean, neat, or humane. They carry moral, ethical, and practical consequences that ripple through society. Through it all, Eva remained enigmatic. A woman with a checkered past, a series of missing husbands, a complicated relationship with her employer, and a final act that changed history. She was remembered not just for the brutality of her death, but for the courage, defiance, and complexity of her life. Her story challenges our assumptions, forces reflection, and continues to resonate today. In the end, Eva Dugan's legacy is enduring. She became the lens through which Arizona and the country viewed the grim realities of capital punishment. Her execution reshaped laws, influenced methods, and serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of the death penalty. Eva Dugan remains the only woman executed in Arizona, buried on her own terms, leaving behind a story that continues to haunt, educate, and provoke reflection. Her story continues to raise questions that remain relevant today. What does justice truly mean? What should punishment look like? Should the state have the power to take a life? These are not simple questions, and there are no easy answers. So, what's your take on Eva Dugan's story? Was she a woman driven by circumstance, doing what she had to do to survive? Or was she a cold-blooded killer, murdering her employer for personal gain? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. If Eva's story made you think, hit that like button and share it with others. Subscribe to Court of Secrets for more true crime stories that shaped history. Drop a comment below and share your thoughts on Eva Dugan's case. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.